Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview has been tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm going to interview Trevel Henry. Thank you so much for seeing me today. Where did it all begin for you, Trevel? Where are you from and what's your background?
Certainly. First of all, Paul, I'd like to say thanks very much for inviting me onto the show. I really do appreciate being here. Good friend and colleague Nick Inge, you interviewed some while back and a few others, and I've had a look. So trust me, I'm pleased to be here.
You're more than welcome, mate. I meet lovely people, and of which you form part of that team. So brilliant.
Thank you. But yeah, where did it all begin? Then, if you wish the backstory as such, I'm a Manchester-born, bred and lad. Actually, good old born and bred in Manchester. Without diverting off topic, but when I say I was born in Manchester, for those football fans out there, you'll know which team I support.
Oh, you're a Blue then?
All day, every day. City till I die. But enough football chat for those who know football. But joking apart, though, yeah, I went to primary school was Holy Trinity near Plattfields Park, for those who know the area or recall the area. Then I went to went to Moseley Road Secondary School, and then I did the 13 plus, which a lot of people are going to go, what's he talking about 13 plus? Even you did a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Which got me into technical school on a technical drawings course. So the program was focused around building, construction and surveying. Yeah, and I'll admit, I loved those two topics with a passion, and we did lots of them during the curriculum. And physical education was the other area I loved with a passion. Unfortunately, outside of that, my interest wasn't the best, let's just say, leave it at that. So by default, as with most people, I wanted to be a budding footballer, listened to all the wrong people, and then age 14, realised it wasn't going to happen. I mean, really, last minute, it wasn't going to happen. So I left school at 14. Showing my age a little bit now, and for me, I always say here a little bit tongue-in-cheek for people, I wasn't in trouble, I wasn't kicked out of school, because youngsters again won't understand leaving at 14, will they, early themselves. But my birthday is August, so I left in July, 15 in August, September 15, of course, and I was in the army basically. So I went straight into the army as a boy soldier at 15 years of age. I was reasonably fit. I was, the classic, big player in a very small pond, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your family background?
My family background, yeah. My parents split up, sadly, as lots of parents sadly do. But Jamaica is the roots of the background, where my family are from. And I have six other siblings, and I was the first born in the UK, so I'm first generation within the family born UK. Yeah, so that I have been to Jamaica and visited family out there, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I have to be honest, and kind of got into the culture for a couple of weeks themselves from there. But Jamaica's the background. They didn't really, I mean, don't get me wrong, by and large, they got into the community, had a good time within the community, certainly, particularly if we think back to the kind of late 50s, 60s, those times themselves, and just staying with the positives, the objective sides of it. It was good, but I didn't think they understood some of the wider issues, what were happening around across the country, etc. themselves. And certainly when I went into the army and I'd come home and talk about some of the things I'd done, then that's when I started to realize that, perhaps, although they have a lot to talk about the Caribbean and around the Northwest themselves, but obviously they travel much further afield than I had at that time, but it was mainly linked back to the Caribbean.
So what year did you join the army?
Well, as I say, going back to basically as a failed footballer, I was literally, there was no plan B. And I was a combination of a lad called, I believe his name was Tony, who joined the Royal Navy as a young serviceman. And sincerely, he came home, he had money in his pocket, he wore fancy clothing. And I thought basically that was for
Why
me.
not?
So went along to the careers office at some point.
And what year was this? 19...
you're going to catch me out here now. I've got 1970.
19. I was going to say 1970. So you're wearing well, sir. That's all I'll say.
Thank you.
So 1970, young lad with a Jamaican heritage walks into a careers office. What was that like for you to go in there? You know, accepting that your mate's gone off to join the Royal Navy and he's got pockets full of pennies. But what was that like for you going in there for the first time?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I sincerely don't remember too much of it. I generally don't. But it didn't feel unnecessarily uncomfortable in any way. I mean, obviously, I was kind of, I suppose, disorientated because I wasn't quite sure what was happening. And I don't remember, as I said, I don't recall too much, but I suspect, I was expecting to go in there and pretty much have a brief conversation, sign on the dotted line, and then I'd be in the army. But as you know, there's a lot of testing and, obviously vetting to be done, not as strict as it is now. But genuinely and sincerely, nothing that springs to mind that made me feel unsure, uncomfortable in any way, if anything. And, for me, it wasn't marketed in the same way it is today, but they're there, aren't you, to kind of bring you in through the door and welcome you with open arms and make you feel, you're the greatest thing on earth, which they did very well, actually.
And then when you walk through the other door, having got your shilling, it's a completely different world. Did you have to take a parent with you? In 1970, you're 15 years old. Did you have to take a responsible adult with you to go and sign on the dotted line, or was it just you?
Well, from what I can remember, so it was just me. Yeah, because it was again, I said I generally don't remember too much for some obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, my parents were somewhat surprised that suddenly I'm announcing that I'm going into the army, and if I'm honest, let's be brutally honest about it. Having just turned 15, I haven't really got a clue what's going on, have I?
Do you know what? Naivety is sometimes the best thing ever. Because if you don't know, it's not. If you don't know what's going on, it's not going to hurt you. So, boy soldier, you went through a form of training for 2 years before you joined regiment, or how did that work?
Yeah, for me, I think probably the best example I can give people as a wider audience, boarding school in uniform.
Right.
Yeah. But obviously, as you alluded to, quite robust in terms of the training and the discipline.
Yeah, but it stands you in good stead. I mean, you look at your office is tidy. You were in the army, sir. I was in the police. If you look at my office, you can tell I was in the police. But so what regiment did you go to after your boy service?
I was Royal Army Medical Corps. In truth, and I say link back to the 13+ building instruction and surveying, I really wanted to join the Royal Engineers.
Right.
But I'd missed the intake numbers. So I was left with the option of the Royal Artillery or the Royal Army Medical Corps. And if I'm honest, I knew very little about the Army. But the artillery, the way it was portrayed to me, didn't sound very attractive.
It's very loud. And where did you serve when you joined the RAMC? Where did you?
Just outside of Aldershot, a place called Ashvale.
Yep.
Yeah, so I served there for just shy of 3 years, as I say, basically 3 years of boarding school, pretty much.
Fantastic. And then what happens?
As with most people those days, there were, if you wish, 2 cohorts by and large, what they would call apprentice tradesmen, so the academics, if you wish, and then junior tradesmen, the non-academics. And although it wasn't a given, but most 8 apprentice tradesmen, as they were called, went in to do the technical jobs.
Right.
And the junior tradesmen, as we were called, did the kind of, the combat medics and things like that. So the field soldiers, if you wish. It didn't always span out. Some people who were apprentice tradesmen either didn't make the grade or wanted to kind of get into the field world, and some junior tradesmen actually proved their academic prowess and managed to get technical jobs. So it did, there was the opportunity and the scope.
So when you finished your basic training, do you get assigned to a particular regiment, or do you stay within that? I'm from Colchester, for instance, and we had a military hospital here. but now you'll have medics that will be attached to 16 Air Assault and what have you. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, certainly back then it was much more from a UK perspective. Geographically, there was Tidworth, Colchester and Catterick.
Right.
15 field, 19 field, and I believe 24 field ambulance. Forgive me if I get the number slightly wrong. But they were the three field ambulances, sorry. So if you think about regiments, think about sections with regiments, as you probably aware, core setups are much smaller, aren't they? Yeah, so in those days, it really was the medics with the core setup would be attached to regiments.
Right.
And the regiments would have their own, and I think they would call RMAs then, regimental medical assistants.
Right.
Yeah, before, as you say, nowadays it's more common to have medics, isn't it? I suppose doing a secondment or actually posted to a regiment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a mate of my son's who's with the paras, attached to the paras. Where did you go from though? Once you finished your training, where did you actually get posted to?
So yeah, I've got posted to Tidworth, which was an interesting. I loved it actually. I won't lie. Yeah, I loved it. I spent from Tidworth, Colchester, a time at Edinburgh at HQ Scotland. I believe the place was called Craigie Hall, and what was the Royal Medical Academy in Millbank, next door to the Tate Gallery before it moved to Walton Tate. Yeah, I won't lie. As a young single man in the army, that was a great post.
Oh, I bet it was. I bet it was. And because the Caribbean have supplied troops for years, haven't they? Part, the Commonwealth forces and what have you. What was the acceptance like in the army when you joined?
Yeah, I often get asked the question quite rightly. I've given talks about, if you wish, for me to put it, to put it bluntly, about being a young black man in the army, etc. Just to kind of say it as it is. Firstly and foremostly, as I say, generally the army, I mean, not everything's a good experience, but by and large, it worked for me.
Yeah.
And I would still recommend it to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Themselves. There was lots of issues around race, I won't lie. A lot of the time, and I'm not trying to soften a blow or anything like that, but as a new recruit, as a young apprentice, new recruit, if they decided it was my day that I was going to get grief, to put it politely, then one of the factors was being a black man, then the colour of the skin, etc. That, please, I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm just...
No. Look. We're men of the world here, mate, and we're not dissimilar. Although you look younger than me, you're slightly older. But the fact is that I understand what you're saying because I come from that generation of I know exactly what you mean. Like you say, I'm not trying to make it right or anything, and I've got some great friends who have been through a similar experience to you. One of them who was a former police officer. He was the first black police officer in the Metropolitan Police, and he's
what was his name again?
Norwell Roberts.
I don't know him, but I know of him.
And yes. I mean, what an absolute character! But he'll say that some of his experiences were bad, and he was treated badly by individuals. But was his service all about being racially abused? No, it wasn't. It was far from it. But people were ignorant back in the day. I'm pleased to say that colour of skin doesn't matter. And by the time I've tripped off this mortal coil, my granddaughter will not see colour. Will not, and that's how we've evolved and evolved properly as well. And that's how it should be.
I mean, if you don't mind, just a slightly different viewpoint, very slightly. And I heard it from a guy from Canada, and I use it quite often. Most people in this world are good people who mean and intend well. Yeah, and I sincerely believe that. That's been my experience. Unfortunately, though, I still think, and coming around the issues of race, but, whatever underrepresented group you are, there's some parallel issues without being too complacent about other people's issues, which I know very little about. But I do, from my own experience, not directly, wider, I do think it's Groundhog Day. Yeah. Things happen. And I do believe generational, it gets better because they grow up, don't they? And to stay with visibility. Yeah. So seeing people who look different is a norm for our grandchildren.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But let's take it back. I mean, we're going slightly off piste here, which I like.
No?
But if you take it back to the football world,
Yeah.
one of my football heroes was Clyde Best. Now he was
I knew that.
he was at West Ham the other week. Now I'm a West Ham fan through and through. I've even got claret and blue on today, and but now if you turn on popular football, if you turn Match of the Day on, a high percentage of the players are black. So you've got that modern culture, and you've got people moving into the modern culture, and I think it's brilliant. You know, I really do. And as I say, I think that it is Groundhog Day at times, and we're regurgitating. And look, let's talk about policing. The Metropolitan Police are being called institutionally racist. Now, personally, I don't believe that the large percentage of officers are racist. I don't believe that at all. I certainly don't believe that the top team. But you're going to have a small percentage of people that are racist who will say inappropriate things. They'll do inappropriate things, and they're not even doing it unwittingly. They're doing it deliberately, and they're the ones that I think need to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
I'm not talking about the ones that say stupid things at the wrong time because they think it's funny, but the ones that go absolutely out of their way to be vile. I sat and watched some friends on Facebook, and like one of the police groups, and some of the things that people have said on there, they showed their true colours. They absolutely identified the person that they were, and they surprised me. And it was for the wrong reason, I'm sorry to say. But anyway, look, let's go back. So you're in the army.
Yeah.
You're a young West Indian heritage lad in the army, and not every day's rosy. That's the bottom line. But it's not. But it's not rosy for a lot of people. It's not only about you. No disrespect, but how long did you serve in the army, in the forces?
Yeah, 20-odd years.
Did you?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. As I say, it worked for me.
I can't. I haven't got enough hours in my day to talk about all the different places you've worked in. Then, so did you serve overseas during that period?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Where did you go then, sir?
I'm fortunate to travel many places overseas, and I'm not embarrassed to say quite a lot of those places were through sport.
Yeah, why not? Wednesday afternoons were all worth it.
America, Canada, Hong Kong, most of Europe, and a few other places, I'm sure. Bermuda, spent a little bit of time in Bermuda, Senegal, and one or two other places. Yeah, absolutely.
How fantastic. And what were you actually doing there? I mean, when you say a lot of it through sport, but what sports were you playing at that time?
Oh, sorry, yes, fair comment. As a youngster, football. Yeah, having represent Army under 18s as such, but in fairness, there were some cracking footballers that were just lazy, and I say that sincerely.
Yeah.
Those who were quite fit could run around a lot. Thankfully, got in. But then, as I got a bit older, I got into squash in quite a big way and played quite a lot of representative squash when I was in the services, and that got me out to, as I say, some good trips overseas on the old Army tours.
Lovely.
Yeah, but then, from a military point of view, go out and, there's lots of, still to this day, I'm calling training teams. So to support the local communities, thrusters, medics, certainly, going back to, excuse my ignorance, whether it's Belize or British Honduras currently, I'm not sure which it is, excuse my ignorance.
It's Belize, yeah, I think.
Belize, yeah. Thank you. But we did a stint up there for about 2 months where we basically set up a field surgical team in what was, or possibly still is, the capital, Belmopan.
Wow.
And we provided basically first aid support to the local community.
Did you? Because I mean, it's Belize is still a huge training or jungle warfare training camp, and there's historically there's been some issues in one of the local brothels there where I think the Prime Minister's son or nephew was killed or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's still a busy place, I think, for the services. Mm. What was your best posting?
Oh, that's a great Cyprus.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll share with you why.
Listen, share away. The world is your oyster, mate. I can edit anything out that you think, I wish I hadn't said that. But look, you just share away. People are interested in this.
Oh, no, sorry, thank you. As I'm unlikely to swear, anything you put in there, I'll be comfortable with. Genuinely,
Cool.
it's you and I having a chat,
Yeah.
which I'm enjoying absolutely. But
Good man.
Cyprus, the main reason why it stands out for me, and please, this is not a woe is me growing up story, but it was the old classics. I'm sure, with respect, directly or indirectly, you can relate to. Our summer holidays was the old coach trip to the seaside for us, Wales, Colwyn Bay.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it was great. We had a fantastic time. But that was the old, the old street got together, didn't they? A bit like the old Fools and Horses,
Horses,
yeah.
yeah.
The sketches.
Go on a Beano, yeah.
That's it, the Beano. Thank you. I was trying to remember what it was. That's right. And it was that. And it was great. Please don't get me wrong. But then suddenly, I think as a 16-year-old boy soldier, anyway, to get the opportunity to go to Cyprus, it just wow! I can remember it to this day, and it's had a massive influence on me because waking up in the morning as I'm looking out my window now and the sun's shining just meant so much. And I think that stayed with me now. If the sun's shining, it's a good day.
That's
and
fantastic.
Cyprus was just incredible.
Did you ever have to go to theatre? Were you ever in any conflicts?
The first Gulf conflict, but I at that time I was at what was Woolwich Military Hospital.
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth Military Hospital. That's right. It was known then. I was a WO2, so Sergeant Major Class 2, and as happens with most trips out into the theatre, if you're not going as a regiment, suddenly you get a phone call to pop up to what I call the top corridor. You get a briefing and you're en route. So I met up with an REMC Captain McDonald, I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, and the squadron leader. We went to JHQ High Wycombe, and I can't remember the dates as such, but it was literally, I think, from arriving one day, I think maybe 2 days later maximum, we'd had a briefing. We were suddenly the so-called team of experts, MAPPA procedure process. It was called a management aid to protection of personnel, executive reporting. I've got that a little bit wrong, but yeah, management aid, executive reporting, the two P's I forgot. But it's to do around casualty evacuation.
Right, yeah.
So we were rear in terms of forward areas with themselves. And if you think back to certainly those times, in terms of communications weren't nowhere as quick as they are now. So one of the concerns we had, where it was a battle accident, sorry, that's not quite the right terminology, but somebody gets injured during training, up for war, or it was a casualty, but in this instance, a serious injury, then by default, the parents need to be notified back in the UK.
Right, yeah.
So we, or certainly from a medical headquarters point of view, and what we were doing was reviewing that process from the frontline area back to the parents was as smooth as it could be.
Yeah.
But of course, the issue was because you had the cameras out there. If the incident happened at, let's say, 3 o'clock on the 6 o'clock news, you'd be sitting there watching it in your living room as we do today. But trying to get that information back to the parents before they actually watched it on TV, which is, nowadays is even more of a dilemma and issue.
Absolutely.
But there were many a times when we were caught out, obviously, the delay of checking and double checking, going through various points of contact in terms of senior people. It was quite delayed really, but that's what we were fundamentally around the kind of casualty evacuation chain. So I was fortunate. I didn't deploy forward, so to speak. In that respect, I say fortunate. I mean, as with policing, isn't it? You go where you're told and you get on with it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. What was that, 91?
Yes, 90. Well done.
Yeah, 90. I lived in Colchester then. I think about the Gulf War as recent times, but it's 32 years ago. And if you take
reminded me.
If you take that back to 32 years beforehand, you'd have been 4 years old. It's an incredible sort of feeling.
Didn't go to the Falklands.
Right.
Yeah, I went down December 84.
Right.
So the rebuild around Mount Pleasant area before the opening of the airfield and trying to rebuild, regenerate, etc. And that was, I suppose from a military operational perspective, and the recovery and the rebuild was interesting in that respect.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've got a couple of mates, and I interviewed one who came out this week, and the Falklands is still a fresh memory. I was a kid, but it's still a fresh memory. Did you serve in Northern Ireland?
I did, but I only did one very short stint out there themselves, and I spent a lot of the times in headquarters and hospital establishments.
Right.
So I wasn't patrolling the streets per se.
Because Colchester, the military hospital, they've got a med centre there now because the military hospital's gone. And when,
yes.
When I was a little boy, we lived in army accommodation, and I ended up there because I'd fractured my skull. I fell out. Yeah, and we lived in this house, and it was Plessy Block, which was a famous battle, Victorian houses. And I had managed to climb out of my high chair and came crashing down on the stone floor, and that was it. I mean, how I'm still here, I don't know. It probably explains a lot about me, actually. If anybody's listening and they know me, that probably explains a lot about me. What was it like transitioning out of the military? I mean, there were obviously highlights in the military. You travelled, you played your sport, you learnt lots. You finished as a WO2. To be a warrant officer, 1 or 2, you've got serious credibility within your regiment, and the top look down and they have great respect for you, and the folks on the ground have so you're right in the middle. You're the senior NCO, aren't you, at the end of the day?
Indeed, yes.
But what was that like transitioning out from the army?
I've recounted this to a lot of people. Imagine it was like I went for a job interview once in London, and when I left there, all I could think about in my head was it was a gentleman. So the guy who interviewed must have thought I just stepped off a spaceship, having been orbiting the Earth for 20 odd years. I did not have a clue what was going on. Really? I don't mind admitting to you. I was completely lost and disorientated. Thankfully, going back to your earlier comment, I didn't realize how lost and disorientated I was, thankfully, because I probably would have got stressed. But, that analogy in the military, and for me, and I believe this to a degree, in the services, whether it's support or whether it's robust support, if you get what I'm trying to say, but there's somebody there who will either sort it, fix it, or tell you what you need to do. And then suddenly it's this, get on with it. And it was like, having been supported for 20 odd years, suddenly it was like, wow, it really was. Yeah, so completely disorientated. Completely, utterly.
What was your preparation like, though? Because now it's all resettlement courses and they get credits and money to go and do. I've got a mate who went and did a dive course, and another one who went and did a yacht master's course. I mean, which has served him in good, served him well, because he's now working for a yacht sales team. But what was your transition? What was your resettlement like?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, firstly and foremost, I don't think it was, the process wasn't as structured as it is now, and that's, obviously things evolve. But there were certainly much wider, greater opportunities out there than I took advantage of. If I'm honest, I think, like a lot of people, really ignorant, was quite blasé about it all. Because in the end, I think I wound up going on a computer course and something in Tonbridge.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And partly because it wasn't too far from where I was based at Woolwich at the time. B, because to be honest, I wasn't that interested in resettlement. The time was coming to an end, coming to a close. In loosely scripted, I thought I would do something linked to hospitals, loosely, but there was no thought or process plan went into it. It was just, you're a medic, you've done this, and that's what you'll wind up doing. But a lot of good came out of it. I am a glass half full person, you're probably gathering, but a lot of good came out of that. In so much as I love Tonbridge. Kind of waxed lyrical to my wife, who probably was yawning all day long. Here he goes again, another scheme. But the point was, I love the area with a passion, but as you and I know, and anybody else, it's quite expensive in that area. Hence we wound up living in Maidstone, Barming. But that was the link to get me to Kent, actually, because I was going to relocate back up to Manchester.
Right.
Bury, depending on
where you're from. Where is your wife from? Is she from down that?
No, my wife was born in St. Kitts, St. Christopher.
Oh, wow.
St. Kitts and Nevis. Yeah, so my wife's from...
How beautiful.
Yeah, my daughter was born in Germany, so there you go.
How old were you when you left? 40?
No, I left a little bit early on redundancy, but I was 38.
38, yeah, you see, and you're a young man. Some people haven't started their lives. You're a young man and you've still got loads to offer. Yeah. And it's about that giving people opportunity, which we try and do. You know, look, the world isn't always perfect, and we get let down by clients, and they make promises, but we try our absolute hardest to make sure that we do the right thing, and that's why we do that. That's why I do the podcast, because I want to highlight the great people like yourself and Nick and all the other people I've interviewed, because you've all got a story. We've all got stories.
Yes.
And we're all wonderful people. And sometimes people take us on face value, but they don't know us. They don't know you. They don't understand that for 20 odd years, you served Queen and country, that you saw things that people would not ever want to see, and that you've been involved in things that people would never want to do. And when they turn off their television at night or close their door, unless there's Pauls and Trevels that are actually doing that stuff, nobody else is going to go and do it.
No, absolutely. And I certainly, and, you know, people would argue that you and I are a little bit biased, you know, because we're from those organizations, institutions, etc. But, you know, you'll relate to, isn't it? You go into an office, you get a briefing. On the back of a minimal briefing, you're expected to go and make it happen. And with respect, we just felt that empowered to get on and do it.
Yeah, exactly. and that's what, even the worst copper, worst soldier in the world, they may not get it right, and they may not understand, but they understand what customer focus is. You know, the army's slightly different to the police, because the police is outward facing with their customers, where the military is more inward facing, although they're now doing more peacekeeping duties, and they're out, you know. I was reading the other day, you know, people out in Kenya, they're doing anti-terrorist patrols out there, but the public don't know that. And I think that the police and the military could help themselves so much more if they were more proactive in the way that they show off the great work that they do.
Oh, yeah, I think you're 100%. They are the world's worst, the police, the army, the navy, the air force, the ambulance service, the fire service, the world's worst at promoting themselves.
Yeah, because they've got this public sector gene, which we've got, you've got, and I've got, but they're not good at talking about what they do, and it's a real shame. So what was your first job after you've left the military?
The first job. Sorry, keep me smiling because I'm reflecting. I'm really covered and genuinely, partly, obviously we set it up this morning, but B, I really thought I'm just going to come in with an open mind and take it where it goes.
Yeah.
Which, you know, quite like. So hence, when you ask me, I'm smiling.
Well, I hope it helps. I hope this is helping, because this is going to be kept forever and ever. Amen. You know. And
first job, basically, I was temping.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, we pretty much did a number of temping jobs for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And the usual thing, the agency would send you to A, B, or C, a lot of it in London. I was embalming Maidstone at the time. And the story I tell to people, basically, I was probably one of the oldest coffee boys in the country at the time. But I didn't mind, I genuinely didn't, I'm being sincere, I didn't mind it. It was better than sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. And by the way, when I say fat, not woe is me, it's not that story.
No. I've
been active for 20 odd years, here, there, and everywhere, and suddenly for want of an expression, wake up and I won't say a sense of purpose, that's a bit too dramatic, but waking up and, you know, there was no plan, no real structure to the day was, wow, it wasn't, you know, please, people have it a hell of a lot worse. I've only probably scratched the surface, but it wasn't a good experience.
But you've just come out of an organisation where if a young soldier walked into your office, they'd call you sir.
Yeah, fair point.
And now you're serving coffee and looking at you and talking to you, you're probably calling them sir, because your disposition is all around respect, and, you know, and I'm the same even now. If I don't know somebody's name, I don't, you know, they're still sir, and that's how I am. But how? I mean, that must have been quite demoralising to start off with.
I generally, again,
here's your half full bit. You're half full all the time, aren't you? I can tell.
Yeah. So and you know, I dare say, you know, the human psyche is that you block certain things out of your mind, you know, for obvious reasons. But yeah, I suppose other than the uncertainty of going into an environment where I wasn't familiar, out of my comfort zone and things like that, which I think is quite natural for a lot of people. But no, nothing, feeling down, low, demoralized, suddenly I'm on a pedestal, whatever pedestal it was, and then suddenly no longer on that kind of, generally none of that. None, if anything, it's not tangible, but I believe being amongst people, having, some professional, some social, some banter conversations, there's no way I can ever evidence this, but I just think it lends itself to part of the story to being where I am now. I really do.
So how do we progress to where we are now then? Because you've gone on to do some great things. You were the training manager for Kent Police. Now, how did you get to that position? I mean, that's quite a, Kent, a sizable force, huge amount of credibility. Mm-hmm. How did you get there, first of all?
Yeah, and just to kind of to join the dots a bit in the transition, having done a number of temping jobs, then I worked at medical surgery, a doctor's surgery, right, for about 13 months. And I have to be honest, I didn't enjoy it. I spent most of my day listening to complaints, and a lot of them were just so unfounded, but you had to go through the process. Yeah. So thankfully, the job opportunity came up at Kent. It was advertised as a physical education coordinator, PTI, physical training instructor. Yep. And, I'll be honest, I was very excited about applying for it. And coincidentally, I think either the evening before, 2 evenings before, I was speaking to a good friend of mine. And during the conversation, it turned out we were both applying for the same job in Kent. Very long story. I was, I think they call it the ACIs, Assistant Instructor of Physical Training, as was in those days. Yep. So if you was a PTI within the Corps, your regimental cap badge. Yep. Whereas my friend, he was Physical Training Corps, Army Physical Training Corps. Okay. So I came off the phone. I remember saying to my wife, I said, I can't believe it. She said, what? I said, he's going for the same job as me. I won't say his name if you don't mind. No. But he's going for the same job as me, and by default, qualifications-wise, he's going to beat me hands down every time. And as they say, excuse upon behind every man is a good woman and all the rest of it. And I was massively into my squash and fairly okay and all the rest of it. And she said, well, theme your interview around squash, as much as you can. Obviously, I had to link it to policing, but that's what that's your passion. And I think that made me feel relaxed. And sometime later, from my perspective, the realization that it isn't necessarily the most qualified person they want for the job. You need the skill set, but the person they think is going to fit into the team, into the dynamic of what they're looking for. Because as I say, on paper, my friend, hands down. But that's how I became, as I say, the physical education coordinator. I was met by a PC, Charlie Small, who was basically part of the public order team, who on my day one took me up to the PTI's office, which was, do you know Kent at all? Excuse my ignorance.
I do, yeah.
All right, the driving range. Yep. And now the driver training school's up there.
Training school,
PTI's office, if you wish, with a gym. Yeah, and there was a sports dome there. Like these tennis domes that they have. That was the gym, a sports dome. But he took me up to the office, opened the door, and it was just full of boxes, and that was it. And sincerely, that was my welcome to Kent Police.
Well, what year was that?
Say again, sorry?
What year was that?
Oh, May 94, actually. 94. Yeah, May 94. Yeah, May 94. And I mean, even during the interview, Stuart Donaldson, I think he was chief inspector, but that bit doesn't matter with respect. But Stuart Donaldson, during the interview, I can remember him saying to me, he said, you look very relaxed, and basically my response was, well, to be honest, other than the fact that you wear a blue uniform and I've been wearing green all my life, and some of your jargon I don't understand, but I said, this is what I've done all my life. Yeah. I feel like I've
come home.
And I think, as you relate to, we just say growing up with your parents from the service, just, don't get me wrong, all big industries have their culture, by the way. It makes me chuckle.
Oh, of course.
People go, your uniform hierarchy. I go, you take the average person to a local authority. If we watch the group down there during a break time, we can tell you who the CEO is.
Yeah, that's right.
People are people, aren't they?
Yeah, of course they are, and it's all in all industries, whether it's in Fords or whatever it may be. There's a hierarchy, and that's how it all works.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how started at Kent Police. As I say, physical education coordinator. But from day one, it was all about police self-defense. All about 95%, well, 90% plus easily about police self-defense. If you recall, in those days, certainly from a Kent perspective, very much 94, it was Taijutsu.
Yeah.
Aikido, judo based, arrest in defense.
Yeah, that's right. Goosenecks and everything else.
There you go. Well done.
But I still use that today. CS spray would have just been coming in. Battens have been in for a couple of years. You know, we've gone to asps from sticks, but yeah, I mean, it was the world was changing, and then of course we got the leg restraints and everything else that went with it. And I mean, what was that like though? Going into that, you've gone from the military, you've gone into the police. Now the military, dare I say, is probably more structured in relation to discipline. You know, as a sergeant major, if you walked in and said, right, you stand there, they'll stand there for as long as you like. With the police, I mean, now it's even harder because they've all got their phones and they're all WhatsApping their mates. But what was that like going into the gymnasium and trying to train all those new probationers?
Yeah, well, from the probationers, it wasn't too difficult, but going back a pace though, but just the kind of the general discipline around the training school area complex. Yeah, in my head, I struggled with a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I remember the superintendent at the time, having my welcome interview with him, and at the end of it, I remember asking him, how would you like me to address you? And he kind of looked at me, and if he'd have said to me, call me sir, that wouldn't have batted an eyelid because that's where I'd come from.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah, and in the end, I mean, I must admit, he said, you can call me Steve, and I can't remember exact conversation, but it's something to the effect of, I can't call you Steve, you're the boss up here.
Yeah, and where do you go to from there? I'm with you, absolutely with you, 100%. Of course, at that time, I think Ashford was still going as a police training school, wasn't it? So you wouldn't directly, you'd get the initial intake, then they'd be dispatched to Ashford, and then they'll come back for local procedure course.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely spot on.
But you're then training people that are coming to the end of their service, and they'd have done 30 years. So in 94, they'd have joined in 1964. So you're getting the old and the bold come through who really don't want to be there. They're not interested in using gas and batons and things like that. What was that like? Do you recall any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, for me, everybody took to me. I get that. I'm not that naive, but I can sincerely say I very rarely had a problem in terms of, let's say, discipline, for want of an expression. People, of course, people don't want to be there. And even to this day, people don't want to be at certain training. But as long as the courtesy is there, and with respect, there's training I've been on in the past where I really didn't want to be there. But as long as you're courteous enough, you know what I mean, to look attentive, etc., I can live with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people were comfortable enough, and I was comfortable with them saying, you touched on it. I was very fortunate, and you can't really pick your timing, so to speak. But when I came along in 94, at the back end of Taijutsu, getting changed into judo suits, going up there, and you'll recall this as well, and I smile now, I'm slightly embarrassed. We didn't do any talking, did we? Remember, if this and this happens, this is how you manage it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the talking bit.
Yeah, no, they grab hold of your shirt, you grab the hand, and you put them in an arm lock. It's as simple as that. I still
100%.
remember them. I still remember every move.
100%. You remember learning break falls? You had to go down on your knees, fall on your backside, and then you progressed it before all of that. And I look back now, and I'm sure others do, really getting changed into judo suits to go and practice martial arts, to go outside and work with the community.
Yeah, but I think, but I think again, it's a part of the discipline, isn't it? We as a society, discipline falls apart, and from a police perspective, there is no rank in a dojo. You can either do it or you can't do it, and I think it's a really good thing. I think it's a really sad day when we stop doing these things, going on your 1.5 mile run, doing your 20 press-ups, 20 sit-ups, 20 burpees as part of your... Because with the greatest will in the world, a fat knacker like me could go and do a bleep test.
But we still get fixated, don't we? There, somebody has to look like, present like an Olympic-based athlete.
Yeah.
We're still fixated with that, aren't we? And in the past, I've been guilty of that. I don't mind admitting it. But, thankfully, as you get older and allegedly wiser, at the end of the day, as long as somebody can do the job, and as well as I do, not just policing, but many jobs, define the job.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I do think it is about presence, certainly in the police.
Yeah.
Standards and presence actually do matter. And, I would wear my hat with pride. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be out there with my big hat on and my flat cap, whatever the situation, and turned into my dad. Yeah. How long were you there as the head instructor?
Well, just linking back a little, if you don't mind, a little bit.
Yeah.
I think twofold. When Batten came in, because remember prior to that, and I suppose just to give people a little bit of context, as you will certainly know, it was a wooden truncheon and chain link cuffs, which nobody carried. So suddenly we went to Batten's rigid handcuffs. As you quite rightly say, you call it its colloquial title, CS gas, it was more commonly known.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, you'd have your old and bold, and I say that with tongue-in-cheek, humorously, who then attend the training. And from my experience, they go through the training, but at the end of it, they go, I'm not really happy about this. I spent all these years doing this.
Yeah.
And now I'm being told I've got to carry all this kit. And by the way, you tell me if I'm concerned for my safety and I can justify it, I can use force. And that's how a lot of the conversation, after the training, they come up, now it's comfortable to have the conversation. Why not? We want people to be empowered.
Yeah.
But they'd say, this is not me, that's changing, I don't like this, and things like that. I'll be honest, initially, I struggled to get my head around it, because bearing in mind where I'd come from, I couldn't, after a while, I started to appreciate, particularly people in certain roles.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily front-facing. But yeah, initially, probably for a good year or two, possibly, I really struggled with why wouldn't people want to attend training and get PPE? It just didn't make any sense to me at the time.
But I know people that actually handed in their tickets. They actually retired on the back of having to carry an Aspen.
Yeah, actually, what you just said about, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, people handed the tickets in, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Right.
Yeah, they just said, I'm not doing this. And a lovely fellow. And he just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm not here to beat people up. I'm here. He's a community police officer. He was as hard as nails, don't get me wrong, but if he needed to do it, he could restrain somebody without using a baton. Yeah. And I think that, look, has it gone too far? I don't know. I do worry that all of this additional equipment has it's built a barrier between the officers and the public, which I find really quite, like the tasers. But I also get that people have got to defend themselves. But you only have to look at the rise of complaints around use of force. I wonder if there'd have been the same level of complaints if people had just, grabbed hold of somebody and restrained them in the old-fashioned way. I'm not saying giving them a beating or anything like that, but the old-fashioned grab hold and hope for the best, that went a long way.
Well, something you just said there, and genuinely, I was going to bring it up, but you've introduced it. But I think, the issue with PPE has put a bit of a gap between the policing and the community, from a wider perspective. But I also think, going from the days of the white blouse on the blue shirts, the broadly blue trousers, to suddenly wearing black shirts, black trousers, boots, the elasticated buttons. Now it's designed differently. I was like, wow, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I used to like the blue shirt with the black tie, with the black trousers, blue trousers, clean shoes.
Yes.
I used to walk the town in a big hat, wearing look, it wasn't practical, but it looked bloody smart. But I'd wear a tunic, and when it was raining, I'd wear an overcoat. Now, and if I went to a pub fight, then that's how we were dressed. And if you wanted to wear a jumper in the car, you had to wear the same jumper as the bloke that's sitting next to you. You couldn't wear a summer jumper. If he had a NATO on, you had to wear a NATO as well. So there was that standard of uniformity. And there was nothing wrong with that. And like I say, I know I sound like my dad,
No.
but that's how it was.
So there's some things I'm sure, like you in my family and kind of, I'm going to call it circle of people I know and all. Yeah, some things I'm just sorry, I'm not buying it.
No, I'm with you. But the problem is that the police constable today that will be wearing that equipment will be the chief constable of a force in 20 years' time. And then they'll try and change it even further, and there'll be more additions, and there'll be, greater barriers. But I also accept, well, I don't know. I don't know what the figures are around assault on police. It'd be interesting, actually. I might do that as an FOI to find out what the levels of assault on police are now, where they're all carrying PPE and they're doing it compared to 20 years ago, because they'll still have those figures.
We roll out the line, I say we, the Royal we, Home Office approved techniques. But let's be brutally honest. What does that actually mean? And I get it, by the way, and you get it, and most people get it. It kind of implies, doesn't it? If you've got this manual and you do exactly what it says in the manual, everything's fine. But you and I know, and many people know, by the way, without being rude, that's not realistic.
No.
It's not really, you'll never have a manual which will cover every situation. It's impossible.
But most of the people that adjudicate on it have never had a fight with an angry person.
Well, you're getting into my favourite subject now, which is the fact that every adult is an expert allegedly at speaking to people.
So how long were you doing the training for Kent then?
Yeah, so my apologies. Yeah, so in 94, got into police self-defence trainer, to give it its generic title.
Yep.
And that lasted up until about 1999.
Right.
And that's when that was the start, sort of, certainly unbeknown to me at that time, towards becoming the manager of the training unit.
Brilliant.
And we spoke about, I think, much earlier on, that's when the review went from, I believe it was 50-odd trainers. I think 9 were actually doing it full-time, if you wish. So, there wasn't enough training across the force. Therefore, the percentage of numbers of officers trained was quite low, if you wish.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were carrying a risk around that for obvious reasons. So we decided to centralise the unit. And I'm not sure, I'm not privy to how the conversation came about, but eventually I became the manager of the unit, having been there for quite a significant period of time. And at that point, I was seconded up to the public order unit. So as opposed to working at, I'm going to call it the training school at the back of the complex,
yep,
as such, to the front of the house where the public order unit were based. And then we, in the January of 2000, I believe it was, then we interviewed, or certainly selected 6, maybe 7 civilian trainers. We went on a very steep learning curve around, and I can relate to it, obviously going back to 94, doing the training, obviously that was, the learning curve was massive, but then suddenly doing the training and people are talking about the law relating to the use of force with no background was like, wow. With respect, don't know what you're talking about. Well, you're the trainer. Yeah, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Section 3.
Yeah, well, I haven't come through the same funnel you've come through, And I mean, people were fantastic, very supportive, and you had to learn very, very quickly. But yeah, from about from 2000, certainly 2001, up until I left in 2015, but I spent periods of secondments. Although my appointment role was that I was got it within the diversity team, part of the Essex-Kent collaboration.
Yeah.
So although I was still involved kind of behind the scenes in the background, but certainly from 2001 to 2015, certainly 2013, and then after that, the secondment and kind of, I'm going to call it dual different roles.
So you'd have worked with Ian Learmonth?
Oh, Ian Learmonth, yeah, forgive me. And, the reason, for me, the way I just responded, you think I know him like, of course I didn't know him like that. But what I mean is, you think about leadership, for me, he worked.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. He's ex-Essex. I worked in Essex all my service, so I knew a lot of people down there. But, it's a great job. Do you miss that element of your life?
Oh, gosh. I miss 100% the camaraderie. Yeah, occasionally meet up with, because I'm up north now, as you know, and people probably may know or will gather. Occasionally, my travels take me down towards Kent, and as you do, you make phone calls, try and catch up with people. And I'll just say the banter and the humour is great.
That's good.
I'm going to say.
Just going back a step, when you were on the public order, did you get involved in the public order training?
Oh gosh, yeah, my apologies. Yeah, yes, 100% got involved with it. Going back to '94, before when after they lost Crown immunity, policing, I forget, it was '90s, wasn't it? Maybe late '90s, I think. Yeah, and for no wrong reason, but they were a bit more relaxed about, certainly from my perspective, what I could get involved with, is all I'll say. And which worked great for me. And I think some of it, because I'd come from the services, I think there was just that perception, he's fine with it, he'll be okay. And I was, and it was great. And bear in mind, that I wasn't applying it operationally, but I needed to be as much as I could up close and personal without being, grandiose. So that at least when I'm delivering training, I can put a bit more context to what I knew about it or what I thought I knew. Yeah, so I got to shadow loads of people in different roles and thoroughly enjoyed it. Loved it with a passion.
So you would have been to Lid a few times then?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yes, but enjoyed that as well.
I used to love going down there. That was doing the training down there. The smell of petrol and the bricks, and it was character building. Absolutely, and it stood you in good stead because you actually knew what your team were capable of, and you knew the people you could rely on that weren't going to, dare I say it, bottle it at the wrong time. But
it's only, isn't it, when people, not just in policing, the military, in lots of environments, but when people have, as a body of people, have been through hard times and good times together, then that's when the bond forms, isn't it? That's when you get to know your fellow person. And, let's be really honest, in that group, not everybody likes everybody, but to the outsider looking in, tight, really, and that kind of stuff. And it sounds very great. And I, so when I'm talking to some families, I'm sure, and all of us do, as the more mature people, they look at us and start yawning. But it's like, no, that was a great experience.
But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely. There were people that probably couldn't stand me, but I knew that if we were in a situation, I knew that they had my back and I had theirs. There was no way we were going to hang each other out to dry. We were going to work together. And, over 30 odd years, and the same with yourself in the military, you get in some really tight spots and you need to have that camaraderie.
And some of those guys today, it still comes with them a lot, maybe online more and stuff like that, but still, and, I don't mind admitting it, we still tell the same stories over and over again.
Yeah, it is lovely. What was the motivation to leave in 2015? What made you turn it in?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think like police officers, isn't it? And I remember, and I used to have this conversation with a lot of police officers who came into training, and most wanted to do it anyway. But in the same way you joined policing to go out there and look after and work with the community, by and large.
Yeah.
And I joined to train people. So don't get me wrong, I enjoyed being a manager. A lot of kudos went with it in the context, but I can't remember, I couldn't give you the date time reference, but I can remember clearly being in the office and they were talking about something in training, and that was a realization that actually it's moved on now from what I'd introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really, it must have been a long time of reflection, like what I thought I knew, and I had a big involvement in the training and moved on significantly. And I'm not saying that was the moment but that was probably the first realization that, this isn't quite what I came to do, although I was still enjoying myself.
Yeah.
And then I think the secondment to a degree to the diversity team, as they were restructuring. And, I learned a lot within the diversity team, and the colleagues at Essex genuinely were great. But looking back, then the kind of writing was on the wall that, things have moved on now and you don't feel as connected as I used to. And thankfully, or fortunately for me, the redundancies came up because in my head, and I think when people are moving on, particularly after a significant period of employment with a body, an establishment, an organisation, there comes a point when in your head you've moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I must be honest, and I said to quite a few people, I was fortunate. Well, I got it anyway, but had I not got it, I'm not sure what I would have done because my head was no longer there anymore.
But there's an irony, and forgive me, but there's an irony that you've been taken into a team that is about inclusion, and you don't feel included anymore.
Good point. Never thought of it.
But it's true. You know, you've gone into a diversity inclusion unit, and you don't feel part of the team. I mean, there's a huge irony there.
You know something, and I've kind of missed the blindingly obvious you said. I never stopped to think of ever stop. Yeah, I remember having a conversation with a colleague of mine once. Nikki, that's right, Nikki, bless her. She's genuinely taught me a lot in terms of the wider issue around that, because most of my links to diversity were around race, BPA, or KMEP as they call it, Minority Ethnic Police Association themselves. But when I went across to with Nikki, Zoe, and one or two other people, then looking at it from a much wider and broader perspective. But I can remember one day saying to her, we were doing some event or other. I'm like, I'm a bit fed up with this, chunta, mo, and, themselves from there, I'm coming across here. And she would say, yeah, but think about it. At the end of the day, you're being paid to be here. And they're paying you okay to be here. Fair play, you know what I mean? Just mind your neck and get on with it.
Yeah, it's but what you see and what I see in diversity are two different things, and what somebody else will come in, a younger person will see it from a different perspective as well.
Oh yes.
How do you think the police service deal with diversity now? I mean, it's evolved significantly since I joined. But what do you think? Looking back to your army days and your police days, how do you feel that they deal with it now?
Yeah, I mean, currently, because I'm out the loop a little bit now, so I'll go back a couple of years, so to speak, when I was in. But I genuinely believe, from my perspective, Kent made a lot of efforts to try and bring people in Black and minority ethnic people in the main into the organisation themselves. And I was part of some of those processes, and I think there was genuine effort to try and do that and increase the numbers. Unfortunately, I don't think it was intentional, but having through periods been successful in that, and I have no knowledge of this, so it's just my own viewpoint, if you wish, but the steps then around progression, whatever progression meant, I don't think there was a process in there to support people when they came in around that. When I say progression, I'm not talking about all hierarchy, whatever the progression meant. And I think that's where a lot of it failed themselves from there. I also feel that, having tried the processes, certainly from my point of view, over 20 odd years, and the figures never particularly increased, then, I was an advocate of positive action. What I mean by that, so people who from underrepresented, disadvantaged groups who didn't feel they had a hope to get into policing, then they should be supported towards the application process. Yeah, just so they have the opportunity to then, along with you, me, and everybody else, apply to get into the police or get into certain roles. That's what I mean by positive. Not about, to put it crudely, me being placed in front of you, to put it, crudely, so I can get the job. That's not what I'm talking about. But, me, if you wish, being placed alongside you to be able to apply, but with some support, not coaching, support.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think sometimes that the police need to go into communities and break the cycle, because I think that some kids, if you go into some parts of Southeast London, they've got absolutely no chance whatsoever of ever becoming a police officer. Yet they'll make the finest police officers in the world, but they'll never break that cycle because there's no one there to mentor them and bring them through that, through the difficult times, and get them out of the cycle of, whether it be knife crime, drug dealing, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they're doing that, but they're in the company that people that do is making the police service credible so that they will join. Because at the moment, there aren't enough black kids joining the police service.
No.
And until they do, but it's also, and if you speak to Norwell, he'll tell you, and I would love you to meet him because he's a smashing guy.
I know lots of him for obvious reasons. I know lots about him.
And he's absolutely brilliant. In fact, I think he's from St Kitts, if I remember rightly. But nevertheless, but he will tell you that it was the acceptance by the younger people in the black community that were the biggest barriers. The older people were totally respectful, and they wanted him. They wanted him to be their representative in the police service. But the younger people didn't want that. And it's about that education and understanding. And I saw a brilliant video of a young police officer playing basketball with a load of kids in a absolutely superb. That is what community is about.
Yeah.
And I think unless we start to break the cycle, get the coppers in the community, properly in the community, and Baroness Casey has made it very clear, policing is failing because coppers, they've withdrawn their services. There are no, they've closed their police stations. They're not in the community in the true sense of the word. And until they do that, they're not going to change the cycle. So what happens after 2015? You've now left Kent Police.
Yeah.
What happens to you then?
Yeah. So prior to leaving, I think we still call it secondary employment. Getting a job outside of policing work. So I had periods of that, quite a good number of years with sales. So I was familiarising myself, certainly training people in other sectors outside of policing. But in 2015, I just, for me, naturally went into, if you wish at the time, being a freelance trainer.
Yep.
In sales. And, whether people are in enforcement or staff who provide a service to the public, fundamentally, when I say my line of business, personal safety training, stage one's got to be about customer service. It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think people underestimate that from my point. Not all, but a lot of people. It's all about, isn't it? Most days, for most people, are good days. You're having a good interaction with people, having a good time in the workplace, having a great time. Every now and again, things don't go according to plan. They don't necessarily go horribly wrong. We have near misses.
Yeah.
I understand the near misses, then that will make people reflect. It's not that they've been complacent or laxed or anything, but things just happen, don't they? You'll know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Best plans in the world, things go wrong. Yeah. So, I was doing that freelance across different sectors, and basically, like going up and down the country, not on a day-to-day basis, but, just to get experience in different sectors themselves, and just picking things up, because obviously I knew a reasonable around personal safety themselves, but it's just a contextualization.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one level themselves, but then start to understand the language, some of the legislation, some of the regulations for those sectors. And then, as we all know, and that was working very well, still in Maidstone. I was enjoying it. Then COVID hit, and COVID, whilst it was a very bad experience for a lot of people, but for me, it was great. In no particular order, that's when I really got to know Nick very well. Well, obviously prior to that, but you probably know we do Wordly Wise together and a lot of good stuff. And top man, genuinely top man. But Nick joined a networking group, ABC. Shout out to ABC Network down in Kent there. But generally sitting around the table with people, we're running businesses, small, medium, some large, but basically learning lots from them. And I won't lie, thinking, well, actually, I fancy some of that. Not that I can do any better than them, but listening to what they were doing, thinking, well, I can do the same. And it was a massive turning point to getting a bit more business-minded about this, networking. And I'll be honest, until COVID, I didn't really appreciate the value of networking. I've got lots of contacts, lots of good friends, lots of colleagues, and now appreciate much more the value of networking. It should never, ever be underestimated.
Oh, it's huge. It's a huge part of any business.
Yeah, but then I think with that, making your own luck, so NVC was, because that's the company I ran. It's still in the background, which I'll make a link to. But that was developing quite well. And then last year, towards the back end of last year, I was given an opportunity. A gentleman by the name of Mark Dawes, a lot of people know in the training world, who's a very influential figure. Him and his wife Deborah, National Federation of Personal Safety, NFPS, sorry, my part limited.
Yep.
They built that up over about 25, 30 years themselves. He was stepping back to retire, and he gave me the opportunity to be a co-director with my co-director friend and colleague Rab Landells, which for me and Rab, what might be saying for him, was a massive step up in terms of a business opportunity.
Oh, fantastic!
So we a much wider hub. What I forgot to add in all of this, apologies, was that whilst I was at Kent Police back around 2001, I got involved in the world of expert witness reporting.
Wow.
Yeah, and that, and if I say to you, and I'm not exaggerating too much, I was called in, given the briefing, here's the document, get on with it. Never even been to court in my life.
I take it you've been to court now?
Yeah, lots. But at the time, I forgot the sergeant's name. Slightly embarrassed, but he went out of his way to take me into a courtroom, so that when I had to go down the next day, I wouldn't be totally out of my comfort zone. Because people assumed I'd been in court. I mean, hopefully not negatively, by the way. I hope not, but but certainly doing the expert witness reporting, which I still do now. And you'll know, but just for the wider context. Receive instructions from solicitors to review case file evidence about the appropriateness of the use of force, and based on the evidence that's presented, give my opinion based on. But I like to view it from appropriate, because you touched on it. It's for a jury, isn't it? The judge to decide what was reasonable, etc. So we do that across all sectors, all services. From an NFPS perspective, we train trainers, but we also support business in terms of. And I'll say it, but I'm sincere about this. We want people to improve the safety of the working environment, enhance the services they're delivering, because if they feel safe, they'll provide a better service to the people they're there to support, which will ultimately empower them to feel good in the workplace. And I know people will say that's a cliche, but I believe that. I really do.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. So you are an expert witness in use of force. Absolutely brilliant. And what is your coverage?
Predominantly the UK, but overseas. In the last 3 or 4 months, I've done 2 cases linked to New Zealand.
Wow.
Sadly, it was online. I didn't get to sadly. Damn. When it first came up, I won't lie, I was thinking, great.
Here we go. There's still time. They might plead not guilty or guilty. And it's more defence work that you do.
No, if I'm honest with you, yes, it turns out that way. I do apologise. Yes, it does, but I don't, kind of put myself in terms of I work only for the defence. No. As the instruction comes.
No, exactly right. No, I absolutely understand that. It's but it's primarily. And if do you do work for the Federation as well around policing or? Police officers, use of force by police officers?
Not the Federation, not Unison directly. I don't think Federation, not that I'm aware of, had to do a report that the Federation have been involved with in terms of me being instructed. Unison, there was one linked to a local authority up north, in the north. Sorry, I'm in north.
I was going to say, you're up north now.
Yeah, I have to keep, it's 2 years plus I've been here, but I have to keep reminding myself, sorry. But yeah, certainly, a lot of it, without going off at a tangent and being too callous, but people get injured. Sadly, some people die. Then you have to review that, and as I say, based on the evidence that's presented within the case file, then give an opinion back to solicitors, who will obviously do what they need to do from a court, inquest, tribunal. Because as you and I know, many others know, it's not just about courts. It could be an inquest, and a tribunal process, isn't it? It's a presiding person who's going to make a judgment ultimately.
And I assume you do licensing, anything to do with licenses and door staff and whatever that may be as well.
Absolutely
fascinating world. And how are you enjoying it back up north then? After all these years, you've migrated back to the northwest.
Loving it, honestly. I love it with a passion. The story I used to tell my family from Manchester, so they still live there. I see them, brothers and sisters. We all get on very well, and they used to look at me all strangely because I was in the supermarket the other day, and we go to check out, and you've got people just chatting away about this, that, and the other, and nobody's bothered about it. Everybody's just relaxed. Whereas down south, and I'm generalising, of course I am, but people get a little bit stressed when they want to get on. Up here, everybody's just not everybody, but most people are quite chilled and relaxed. Yeah, so.
Especially the City fans amongst you.
Oh, well, the family is split on that. And
are they?
We're pretty much split down the middle. So, but yeah, June the 3rd's coming, isn't it? So, cup final day.
So what happens next then for Trevel? Where are you going to next, and how's life going to pan out for you?
Certainly, we've got X number of years because this has been a co-director. It was a new role for us. So if you wish, kind of short term is, we want to become, if you wish, the hub in terms of work-related violence themselves, and be the go-to people for training, advice, support, consultancy services, etc. And, broaden that and strengthen that overseas. We have very positive links in Hong Kong, Australia, Malta. I'm trying to have conversations elsewhere to make those links, those partnerships, collaboration, so to kind of, on the back of the good work that's already been embedded within an FPSN, move it to another level. Obviously, there's work to be done to do that. Right back to the start, we were talking about grandchildren. Yeah, then it's all about my grandson now. Everything's about you. So when you were talking about grandchildren, that's why I was very, very interested because, behind the scenes, as much as we love what we're doing here and the work we do is important, but when you get with the grandchildren, everything else just goes and disappears, doesn't it?
Mate, how old is he?
He's not quite 2 yet, but bless him, brilliant.
I get emotional every time I see him. I tell you, I don't know if there's a God, I don't know, but they're a blessing, and you have to make the most of every day. And, I've got some lovely friends who are in a very difficult position at the moment, health-wise.
All right.
And it's sharpened my mind about the way that the things I'm going to do with my grandchildren that I can to make those memories, because we don't know how long we're going to be here.
Well done. Yeah, exactly that. That's interesting to reflect on that now, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And I think as you get older, you face your mortality more. And I'm very lucky. I've got some brilliant friends who work in some great places, and I'm going to take certainly my granddaughter and my grandson when he finally gets over from Australia to places that money can't buy. But when I've tripped off this mortal coil, my grandchildren will say, "My granddad took me here."
Sincerely, no, I get it. I honestly, Jen, that's why I say when you talk about it, it's here's a shocker, and you'll relate to this. Isn't it strange that our grandchildren are the greatest kids in the world?
honestly, mate, I cannot quantify. I love my boys dearly, I do, because they're my sons.
Yeah.
But I cannot quantify how important my grandchildren are. Yeah. And you realise how important those little babies are, honestly. And I've got a grandson in Australia who I love dearly, but I don't get the opportunity to see him or spend any time. I've met him twice. I went out twice last year. And we are lucky. The fact that we've got these kids, what we're really lucky, Trevor, is that we can give them back at the end of the day. and let their mummies and daddies put them to bed when they're screaming. When match of the day comes on, I haven't got to worry about it, have I? I'm all sorted. But yeah. So my friends who are seriously unwell, I know how important their grandchildren are to them, and I know how important my grandchildren. So it does put a different perspective on your life. How long are you going to do this for, though? I mean, you've got plans. Man City are going to go on a world tour, and you're going to spend quality time with your grandchild. But how long are you going to do this for, mate?
Well, no, the next review period is 70 years of age, which is kind of 3 years away-ish and stuff like that. And I genuinely, and I've said this all my life, so I'm kind of hitting 50 and that. All the time I'm still enjoying being around people. I'll still be involved.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. And it's not work sometimes, is it? When it's your own business, it's not work.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I'm being serious. Like you, and I can tell. But we love what we do. I love it.
Yeah.
You know? It's about people. It's about people.
I always say that I will never ask for anybody if I can have a day off, because I don't want to go back into that situation. I'm quite happy to do what I do and never have to ask for it. But I work every day in some form or another.
Yes.
I'll spend my day grafting away, and I'm sure you're the same.
My daughter used to be freelance when she was much younger, and like yourself, growing up in institutions. I don't mind admitting, we'd have some fallouts over the fact that she didn't have a full-time regular job.
Yeah.
But now that I'm at the other end and I'm now working for myself, I get it now. Yeah, it's so empowering and rewarding, isn't it?
Oh, it is absolutely. Look, it has its downtimes because you think, what am I going to? I hope such and such can't. And I think being in the police, if I went off duty and I'd say to the sergeant or whoever was on duty, can you make sure that's on my desk tomorrow before I come in for work tomorrow? That would be on my desk. They may have sat through the night, bless them, to do it, to make sure that it was there. And the military was the same. It's like, you're the sergeant major. You'd be saying to people, right, I want that on my desk, left, right, tomorrow morning. I find in private industry, the letdowns are quite significant. There is no time scale. There's no time. So if you have a meeting with someone, you say, can we get this result? Yeah, we'll get it done. And then 6 months later, you're still in the same. Yeah. You're still chasing the same rainbow, and that's the only thing that really does get me down in business.
No, you're right, and I still haven't 100% come to terms with that yet. And the other thing I find in certain meetings, and you'll definitely relate to this. I'll say, right, we've got about an hour for this, 30 minutes. Because I'm sure you've been there. Some of the meetings, some of the social pleasantries go on forever.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, when are we going to start the meeting?
Yeah, let's just get on with it. I don't want to know what you have for breakfast or that you're off to, Dubai for your holiday next week. I just want to get on with my work.
Absolutely. But yeah, as I say, 7 to be the next review, and I do less front-facing delivery of training now, partly with the size of the business we've got in terms of keeping all the current, future, etc., clientele on board and getting them on board and keeping them supported. And plus as well, I think, in terms of my age now, that kind of suits anyway. I don't mind admitting, although I still like to do my exercises and so I keep fairly healthy, but your body reminds you if you do a bit of a robust session that, you're not 18 anymore.
No, sadly. Sadly, mate. Trevel, it has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, sir. And I genuinely mean this. I hope that we get to meet up and I get the opportunity to buy you whatever you drink.
And a coffee. I don't drink, sadly. But
no, there's no sadly at all. I think you're quite right. Otherwise, you'd end up like me. By
the way, I've been meaning to ask you.
Go on.
What did bearing in mind the beard, what did you think of the old Chief Constable Police Scotland?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about he's going to ban beards.
Oh, now, listen, let me get you onto that one. I actually agree. And I actually agree. The rule of thumb used to be that you could grow a beard in your own time. You'd never grow a beard on duty. So if you're on annual leave, you grow a beard. So I only grew it to look like my mother-in-law. But anyway...
Steady.
But the other one for me, and I've got tattoos, but you would never ever know, is the excessive amount of tattoos that coppers have got now. They've got a beard down here, and I think that's probably what he's talking about. But they've got a huge beard, absolutely covered in tattoos, and they're lovely, lovely people, but I can't relate to them. I want somebody, if I'm in dire need, look, I don't care what they look like if I'm in that much of a need, but if they're investigating a crime or whatever it may be, I want someone to come around that I can relate to.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, there's an old saying that we or a phrase that we use in the police. Is there anything you'd like to add, alter, or correct in the statement that you've made today?
No, I'd like to just kind of from a wider perspective add, but no, nothing. I mean, genuinely, everything we've been discussing, I'm comfortable because the interaction's been sincerely has been great. But what I would like, if you don't mind, just a little bit linked to what I do and then
Yes.
and I say this sincerely, but if there's anybody out there who needs any help, support, advice, I'm not talking about training. Yeah, we'll provide training, of course we will, but just help, support, and guidance, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Where we can help, we'll help. If we don't know, then we've got a network of people we can call on to support people. But I appreciate you giving me time just to put that out there, please. So it's not a sell, it's just offer of support.
Listen, this is what we do. So what I'll ask you to do is if you can let me have all of the links to everything that's relevant, LinkedIn, whatever you do. If you let me have the links, I will put that in the main body of the text on the main page, and people can click onto it. You'll be able to find it on the main page associated to this particular podcast. All I'll do is I'll send you the X-Job Services link, and you can have a look at that. And basically that's a repository for people that have got background in police or military, and they can advertise their businesses on there. And jobs are good. And then people can go to that because it's a repository for nice people who can promote their businesses on there. You can have a look at it. There's no pressure. If it's not for you, then that's fine.
All right, brilliant. Certainly, I'll definitely look at that without a doubt.
Trevel,
and I generally will make contact when I'm coming down, sincerely. And by the way, I'm glad you mentioned Clyde Best, because that really does take me back to my being a child. Clyde Best. Wow.
He was one of the first black players in the first division. I mean, we were in the first division then, but he was an absolute legend. And I mean, this is another subject, but it's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for your time today. You've brought out more emotions in me than I realised, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. And generally, thanks for the opportunity to meet with you, chat with you, and have a really good time with you. Honestly, it's been good.
It's been fantastic. Well, listen, God bless, and all the
coffee.
Yeah, definitely, and all the best to your family, and I wish you well, sir.
All right, love to your family.
Take care, man. God bless. Cheers. Bye-bye.